Welcome to those of you who have made it on time and those of you who are going to catch this part on the recording. Today we are thrilled to welcome Tricia Conyers and John Norcross to talk about how change models influence change programs. By the end of our time today, we should have a wonderfully, exquisitely deep understanding of what the heck that means. What is a change model? What we can do with them, and what some of those different types of change models might be. As I mentioned, this is Tricia. Tricia, yay! Nice to see you, and John, who will be leading us. My name is Elise Keith. I'm going to be tech help, so if anything goes wonky on the tech, just let me know, and I'll help out. And this is a participatory event. So one thing I like to do up at the front of these events, sometimes people show up and they believe that it will be a webinar, and then they get sad and scared. And we say, oh, there's a breakout. And then they say, I'm out of here, and they leave their partners hanging. So just heads up, there will be times to talk to other people. If that is not your bag, you are welcome to go with our blessing, and we will send you the recording. The other thing I would love to invite you to do today up front, because I know sometimes things happen and you have to go early, is go ahead and right now open up this feedback form. So all of the events here in the Meeting Innovation community are fresh events. They're opportunities for you to learn, but also opportunities for us to learn, like, did that make sense? Did that work? So we would love your feedback towards the end. Go ahead and open the link now so you don't forget. And you'll come out of the meeting and it'll be staring you in the face, and you'll be like, I'm going to fill out that feedback form, and everybody will be so grateful. Welcome, Katie. Welcome, Heather. Welcome, Amy. Lovely to see you all. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Tricia and John. Welcome, and thank you so much.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Tricia, and my co-host and friend John is here with me today as well. Really happy to see you guys. Thank you, Elise, for inviting us to join you for this session. It's great. We've been looking forward to it. And I hope you're not scared. Please don't be scared by the breakout groups or run away. It will be okay. I promise. It'll be easy and okay. We really want to hear from everyone, and hearing from everyone, that's how we get the opportunity to sort of learn and kind of connect with what everybody's thinking. So please stay with us if you can. Again, I'll just introduce John. John Norcross and I have been friends and colleagues for many years. We used to work together, and more currently, we co-host a podcast together called Every Little Model. So not surprised that today we're talking about models, and specifically change models. Models is something that's featured in our work for many years. We both worked as change agents and change practitioners in a boutique consulting company for many years. And models were a big way of how we intervened with our clients and how we helped to create momentum behind change using models. So that's what we're going to talk about today. While you're sort of getting yourself ready and centered, I invite you to think about the question around what is a model? What is a model? And you can tell us in chat as you're getting your thoughts together, what is a model? Think for you, what is a model? And share a couple of your thoughts in chat while you're pulling your thoughts together. And I'll also just tell you a little bit about today. Elise covered a lot of this already, but I'll just tell you what's going to happen. We are going to be on for about 90 minutes. If you need a break, please feel free to take one. We haven't scheduled an official break in the 90 minutes, but if you need coffee and you need a bathroom break, please go for it. Like Elise said, this is an interactive session where there's going to be two parts where we're going to work in groups. And while we are in groups, we are going to be, in one of the group sessions, we're going to use Miro. You do not have to be an expert in Miro at all. You literally only need to know how to pick something up and move it around. So if you are comfortable picking something up and moving it around in Miro, what I also like to ask you to do is put a little M in front of your Zoom name. So I know, so that when we're putting people in groups, we can put an M person in the group. So if you're comfortable with that, then please put an M in front of your name. Yeah, so we are going to be exploring models today, specifically change models, and how change models influence change programs. By the end of our session, we hope that you'll understand some different types of models, how they're useful, and how you can use them on change programs. That is our goal. So I love what I'm seeing here about what is a model: a useful representation of some real world thing or process, a framework for thinking about things and approaching what you need to do. Beautiful. A frame to help you understand how to approach a situation. Those are great. John, what do you think? What is a model?
That captures it rather succinctly and eloquently. The phrase or the word I like to use is that a model is a heuristic device, which is essentially what we're seeing people describe in the text in the chat window. It's a way of representing the world in a manner that helps us see things, helps us think about things and phenomena and inform action. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. And I recognize that we are likely to have a mix of people with professional backgrounds. Some of you may not think in terms of models or may not be aware of them. Some of you may do so without being explicitly aware of it. And some of you may have hundreds of models at your disposal. And I will be sweating and challenged to make sure that I'm talking about a model that might be on your list. But no, that feedback on what a model is fantastic.
Perfect. So we are going to get warmed up a little bit. This is going to be our first breakout group. We're going to go in either pairs or groups of 3, depending on how many people we have. And what we would like you to just share in your breakout group and just discuss a little bit is, how do you use models in your work? That's it. How do you use models in your work? And we're going to give you about 7 minutes to do that, to just share with your partner or the other 2 people how you use models in your work. Okay? So we'll see you back in a couple of minutes. Hello and welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. John, over to you.
Thank you. No, it never ceases to amaze me, this whole teleportation functionality. It's a bit fun. So welcome back. Before we ask the next question in chat, can I ask if there's just one person who would like to share what came out of that group, this discussion? How did people use models in their work?
I'd like to ask John. John, I repeated back to you what you said to me, and I didn't write it down. Can you remember?
I'm a speak and forget kind of speaker, but basically, we use models for us to shortcut the conversation and get more quickly to a more usable place where we can better conversations more quickly in a common ground.
Fantastic.
Great.
No, I like that, and that's a nice segue into the chat exercise. I always love this. Boy, that sounded really important. Was anybody writing that? Fantastic. Well, as Tricia's just popped it into the chat window, if you could just respond as you can, what is the benefit of using models in your opinion?
John, did you want that in the chat, or do you
in the chat in the chat, please? I'm sorry. Yes, if you could quickly create common language. Fantastic. Clarity and consistency. Love that visual reference. Shifting perspectives. It's labor saving, and probably brain labor saving.
Ooh, I like that. Not starting from scratch every time too. That's great.
Fantastic. No, this is wonderful. We'll let them come through here, but some of the things that certainly stand out to me around the benefits of using a model, and as I hinted at in the definition I offered, was they help us see patterns and interactions. They help us form hypotheses. They help us explain things. They help us anticipate things, and they help us surface assumptions. As we like to say, use that quote from the Professor George Box, I think it's from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. All models are wrong. Some are useful, but they are a useful way of trying to tease out what we believe ought to happen, will happen, and then to test that against experience. So thank you for that feedback. And our last chat window exercise is, what are some of your favorite models that you use? You can give a name. I don't recommend using characters and text to kind of visualize it, but if you can give us a name or a flavor of the kind of models that you use at work. Theories of change. I echo that. I'm a big fan of those as well. Flowcharts, yes. Okay, last call for any more. There are some that we will be talking about. There are some that, if you're hoping to talk about your favorite model, if you're hoping that the Beatles would sing your favorite song, you may be disappointed. Doom loops, I like that. Mastery models, excellent. Theory U. Kniffen. Am I pronouncing that in a very Welsh way? I hope that's correct,
No.
please. Oh, no. Well, I'm not Welsh. That's probably why.
All right.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Now this is great. So I've got a little exercise here, and for those of you who have used this exercise before, I'll ask you to be kind with us. But for those of you who haven't, this is just a fun little exercise. We'll take no more than a few minutes. And the challenge is going to be, and you can do this with your finger. We're going to have people do it in Miro, but not everybody is a Miro super user. But the challenge is we're going to put 30 seconds on the clock, and we will zoom in so the numbers are a little bit more readable, is to find the numbers in sequence and see how high you can get in 30 seconds. So you start with 1, then you can trace it with your finger, find the number 2, find the number 3, find the number 4. How high in that sequence can you get in 30 seconds? And at the end of that counter, when the dinger goes off, I'll ask people to put in the chat window what number they managed to get up to using the honor system. Tricia, if we can start the clock, you just trace we've given away number 1 in red. We'll start the clock right now. How high can you get? Okay, if people don't mind putting the number that they managed to get up to in the chat window.
And of course, 14. The next number I needed that I got totally stuck on, I saw the minute. The minute, the second, the microsecond.
14, 15 might be missing.
13.
Yes.
A lot of 12s, 13s. Oh, 16. It was 16.
Gosh,
16 looked like the highest.
I confess I'm not the kind of facilitator that is absolutely confident when somebody asks, is 15 missing?
I know.
But I can say, no, I've checked, I double and triple checked. There's always a 15. Okay, so thank you for indulging that. We're going to do it again using this framework down here, and 30 seconds on the clock, and go. All right, if you don't mind popping those numbers in there again. Goodness, the 15 was there.
Where'd number 19 go? There's no 19.
That must be the explanation. I'm going to ask, for those of you who started to get up to the lofty heights of 18 and 21, what did you know? How did you experience this? What did you notice as you went at it the second time?
It's a pattern, of course. Yeah.
And what pattern did you see?
Well, S, then back up to the top, and S. But yeah, there's 19. Now I see it. Now I see it. Yeah. So excellent. This way, this way, this way.
Oh, fantastic. I don't, just so you know, because you have to build trust as a facilitator. I'm not one of the nasty ones that would swap out the numbers behind and change the ordering. No, it's useful. When I've run this exercise, it is an old exercise. It can be used in different contexts. But one of the bits of feedback that people will say is that, yes, layering some sort of basic order on top of what looks like chaos yields new knowledge, yields some patterns, some systemic interaction. There are other versions of this, if you wanted to stretch it out, obviously, where the number pattern changes, and you'll notice different sequences, etc. But it's just a useful way of exploring that experience of putting some sort of grid. It could be a curve, it could be some other heuristic device on top of the chaos to yield knowledge. So no, thank you for indulging me in that. Of course, these materials we can make available should you wish to inflict that on somebody else.
I just want to say I'm so impressed that you follow the back and forth pattern. I did not at all. And I was evaluating each cube in the grid, not in a particular order. But the minute you said it, John, I got that X pattern is there. And I was like, well, I'll be.
And there is another layer to this where it comes with arrows. So it does make that a little bit easier. And I think that's just the point in sort of layering this on. And in a way that models help us to do the same thing, right? They give the order to some chaos. They give us the lens to be able to see things slightly differently and to make sense of them. So it's a great way to just sort of play around with that. So today like we said, we're going to be talking about models and change models in particular. So we wanted to know from everyone, are you currently involved in a change program? Or maybe tell us a little bit about what types of change programs are you either now or have been in the past, maybe a recent change program that you've been involved in. So maybe you could just put that into chat for us and just tell us a little bit about what type of change program are you involved in either now or in the past? And then we're going to get into a bit more about change models. Yeah, so reorganization is always a big one, kind of restructuring and reorganizing teams and organizations. We have some organizations that just do that automatically every couple of years. They just decide it's time for a reorg. Operational changes. Somebody want to tell me RIF stands for?
Just reduction in force.
Okay, reduction in force. Don't want to make any assumptions. Thank you.
Sorry, that wasn't mine. I just experienced it.
Tech startup, great. Building cross-functional and collaboration muscle. Turnaround organizations. We're going to process improvement. Yeah, moving to hybrid work. Exactly, moving to remote work and hybrid work. It's a big change program as well. Beautiful. De-siloing. Wonderful. Yes, so lots of different types of change initiatives that might be going on. And these can be from teams, from small teams to org-wide, org-specific, they can range in sort of size. John, you're going to take us through a little bit of a construct around this before we move on?
No, exactly. And I just wanted to create a bit of a placemat. I don't want to call it a menu because it's not really anything we're choosing from, but just to kind of complement some of the things that we were hearing or reading in the chat window, some of the change typologies. This is not, again, meant to be exhaustive, but in thinking, in preparing and priming ourselves to think about the models that we'll be discussing later on, we did want to share some of the transitions, the deltas that these models have been applied to, and of course others that you have brought into this meeting. The mergers and acquisition, moving from separate organizations to merged organizations, enterprise architecture changes, enterprise system changes. I don't think I saw anything around that, but certainly that is a major change that is not merely a technical one, it's socio-technical. The de-siloing piece around moving from function-based to maybe product or process-based organizations, shifting the culture from a command and control culture to one that's more resilient, agile, or collaborative. We've got a little icon there that looks like the numbers game solution pattern, focusing on waste, reduction of waste, variation and complexity, your typical Six Sigma, continuous improvement processes. I did want to note that, and certainly not in other meetings and workshops that Tricia and I have been involved in, we interact with people who are engaged in community and environmental and social change as well, whether for nonprofits or for grassroots organizations. There is change around environmental greenhouse gas emissions, moving from emissions intensive to a net zero emissions culture. And then finally here, as we've heard, moving from, say, on-premises work to hybrid or remote work. So all of these transitions are ones that we were keeping in our heads as we started to frame up the change models and some of the matrices that we'll share also. And as Tricia, lastly, as Tricia was hinting at, there are other dimensions. These changes occur at the individual level, as we know as practitioners. They involve teams. There can be small groups of people or somewhat larger teams. They can include the entire organization. And we've arbitrarily drawn a line there because we know that you can shift outside of the organization into the value stream and the rest of the organizational business and community ecosystem. But just to remind ourselves of the different ways in which models can be applied, the different levels of analysis. And then lastly, there are the aspects, dimensions of change around shifting mindsets and behaviors, skills and capabilities, the goals, roles, processes, and relationships, GRPR, if some of you are familiar with that acronym, and systems and structures. All of these models that we like to explore, we're only going to talk about a handful in a moment, are focused on, should be focused on addressing multiple levels and dimensions.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, John. So this wouldn't be a conversation about models if we didn't have a model for thinking about models, right? So before we dive into the actual change models, what we wanted to share is that we've often used a framework or a model for thinking about actual models, all the different types of models that there are out there. And to keep it really simple in this sort of 2x2 that you see here, is models can serve different purposes. So we can have models that we think about as why models. So why models tell us why something is important and why it actually matters to us. Then you can have how models, which tell us how things work together. So they talk about intersections and crossovers and dimensions and things like that, tell us how things work. Then you have models that tell us what to do. So they give us choices and options and help us see different pathways that we can take. And then you have models that are what we call if models. So they give us a comparison. They help us to figure out, is something actually working or not? In some cases, these tend to have certain shapes, but they're not, it's not always true in that way. But just to give you an example, a why model can often look like a sort of a ladder or something that's sort of moving upwards. It sort of lays out the journey for us. A how model tends to have a shape of, for example, like a Venn diagram and circles, that overlap, or some sort of overlapping that shows intersections. What models tend to be more like what you see here in terms of like 2x2s and things like that, where you can see different choices that you can make. And if models tend to be like T-shaped, more or less, so that show a comparison of left versus right, for example. It isn't always like that, but that's a framework for thinking about it. And part of what we're going to do when we move into our group exercise is use this 2x2 matrix to look at some change models. We have sort of 10 typical change models that we use here. And we're going to take those change models and you're going to get a chance to talk a little bit about them and to put them into the right, or not the right, because there's no right answer, but into the most appropriate or the most useful box of this 2x2 framework. So we're going to sort those there. And just to get you set up for that, John and I, because we do not want this to, be a lecture of us talking about change models for a very long time, we are going to give you challenge ourselves to give you a 50-second, maximum 30-second introduction to those models. That's what we're going to do. We've challenged ourselves with that. And I think John goes first. So hold on, let me just open this up for him. And so I'm going to zoom in a bit more so you can see them. And we will give you a quick overview, and then we're going to go into groups. John, you're off.
Thank you. I've already been primed. Don't go too quickly.
Too slowly.
Again, many of these you will be aware of, but we'll give each one its due. Cotter's 8-step change model, it captures 8 elements, 8 things that leaders and change agents need to focus on to make a change effort successful. What's interesting and unique and helpful and useful about it, amongst many things, is it is seen as a sequence of things. So if you're not getting some of the fundamental ones there at the bottom around establishing a sense of urgency or a strong leadership coalition, then some of the later efforts may not actually be as effective as you'd like them to be. So it captures elements, it captures a sequence, it can serve as an archetype for a timeline, and it can also serve as a checklist. So that's the Cotter 8-step change model. Lewin's 3-stage model, it uses a frame to start a conversation around what are we trying to unfreeze? What are we trying to change? What are we trying to thaw? and what are we trying, what's the change actually then that we're going to make once those elements have been thawed and made more malleable? And then what does it look like when we have frozen this state? In articulating the Lewin stage model, I always think that there are some limitations to some of those metaphors, but there are also some enablers to them as well, because I think it is useful in helping leaders think about various states that they would like to achieve, and to answer the question, how would we know when we are there? What does it look like? What does it look like when it's thawed? What does it look like when we're sustaining something? So that's the Lewin three-stage model. Six Sigma DMAIC, probably one of the ones that's more familiar to people. Define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. This can be, it's very much a problem-solving change model. It can be used to be very technical. Beneath each of these stages are some specific exercises and models and frameworks and tools and templates and questions that you can use to move from one stage to the next. Like the Cotter 8-stage model, it also implies or suggests strongly a sequence. It's very difficult to go and improve something if we haven't defined what we're going to improve. And it also lends itself to being able to help projects articulate which stage they are in. We are in the analyze stage. We're in the improve stage. Deming's PDCA cycle, plan, do, check, act. I've heard it as plan, do, check, assess, but that seems like a lot of checking and assessing and no action. Plan, do, check, and act is a not only is it a continuous improvement loop, but it's a learning loop, and it can also be applied at the most tactical level. Looking at improving a meeting, improving a set of interactions, and responding to a customer request, a customer problem. It helps people understand that, look, I can go through a loop of planning my actions, taking them out, and reflecting on whether they were effective or not. Moving up a scale, if that's very, it's certainly a flexible model, but certainly used at very discrete levels of activity. The Panorky model takes a look at the wider holistic ecosystem of the organization's value stream, and looks at the various phases that it can go through. This is drawn from the world of ecology studies. And it's used to understand and describe the adaptiveness and resiliency of systems and organizations across scales and time. This has been useful in working with leaders and change agents to help them understand what phase they might be in and need to anticipate. Are we in a startup phase where we're looking to exploit things? Are we looking to institutionalize as we've grown? Has some of that institutionalized caused some atrophy, and therefore we need to engage in a process of creative destruction, and therefore we ought to anticipate a reorganization that would allow us to move through that infinite loop called the Panorky model. Cool. Those are my 5, Tricia.
So I'll go up on mine. So starting with creative tension. So creative tension, this model is about thinking about where we currently are, where we currently are and the future that we want to create, and using the two perspectives to create tension for the organization, so the tension feels the need to be resolved. So it creates the energy for change. So leaders and change agents can use this to explore how to create it in the organization, and what is it going to take to resolve it as well. We've often used this as an excellent coaching tool with leaders as well, when things get tough and change agents and the organization is coming to them saying, this is too much, you need to make it all go away. It's a great reminder to say, are we going to reduce the vision towards the current reality, or are we going to hold the vision true and think about how do we give the right support so that we move the current reality towards the vision, for example. So the creative tension model. ADKAR, this one came up earlier. So ADKAR is used more as on an individual level to think about where is somebody in terms of the process from moving to awareness to adopting change, and what do they need to move to the next stage from awareness to desire, knowledge, act, and reinforcement. I know that ADKAR has a great survey that they use behind this to analyze where people are, and the idea is that you can't, if you start doing things that are helping to get people to act, but they're still missing desire, then you're too far ahead of them. So you have to give them what they need at the time for them to be able to move forward. So that's ADKAR. The trans-theoretical change model is a behavior change model. So this model is about telling us the stages that we go through when we are going through behavior change. It's a great one, a great reminder for me to think about while I'm trying to get on that exercise bandwagon, why I keep falling off into the relapse stage of the model. But yeah, so it gives us the stages that we go through in terms of changing our behavior and thinking about some of the things that we can do to help keep us on track and to help us understand the cycle of how this goes through. You'll often see this drawn as a circle as well, the trans-theoretical model. Then we have Bridges transition model. There are many different versions of this in terms of giving the emotion and the feelings side of what people go through when they are going through a change and what everyone is going through in the organization. So it helps people to position themselves in terms of where they feel. I've found with a lot of teams that I've worked with, that they love models like this because it gives acknowledgement and reinforcement to actually how they're feeling at the moment. And use models like this where they've been hung on a wall and we put stickers on where we are today, and you can see the move back and forth of how people are feeling and take snapshots of that to show progress over time and how they're feeling as well. So it's a great way of helping people to position and give validation to the feelings that they're having. And then the last one is the change equation. And the change equation talks about, at the highest level, what are some of the components that we need to overcome resistance? Resistance is a really natural part of what happens in change. We don't all just jump on it and think, yes, this is the best thing ever. And that we have different feelings associated with change, and we have experiences that make us feel whether this is going to work or it's not going to work, and help us buy into change, whether we feel that we need it. And how do we help get over that resistance is thinking about these three components that we need to have. So do we have dissatisfaction with where we currently are? Do we have a vision of a positive state, a move to where we want to go? Do we understand what that looks like? And do we know why that's important for us? And do we know how to start? What are the first steps that we need to take in relation to the vision? This is a model that we've used, as an assessment tool, thinking about when we're designing change efforts, when we're planning change efforts, as well as assessing how are we doing and how's it going. So those are the 10 models, the 10 change models that we have. And as I mentioned, what we're going to do is we're going to put you into breakout groups, probably for about 20 minutes, I think. And we're going to give you a chance to have a look at these models, to talk a bit about them, and to think about where do they fit in this meta model of models. So does each one fit? Where does it fit? Is it a why model? Is it a how model, a what model, or an if model? That is what. So I think I'm just going to get the instructions for you and put that in the chat. Are there any questions about what you need to do? And actually, I'll just show you in the mirror board as well. So I'm going to invite you into the mirror board. So Don, if you can drop the link into the mirror board for everyone. And then you can just choose a space, a breakout group. So it's been repeated here a number of times. Your group can just choose one. They're labeled on the top. And you can just pick up your models as you're going through your discussion and move them into the different quadrants of the matrix. So that is the exercise. So John's got the mirror board there. And I think Elise has the instructions as well that we will put in the chat. And we will get everyone into breakout groups. And we're going to try and keep an M person in each breakout group. So we don't need 10.
Do you want 20 or 25 minutes?
I think 20 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
So we can debrief it all together. Thank you. Everybody okay? Yeah? Wonderful. I see some nodding heads. Lovely.
All right. Off you go. Have fun.
Welcome
back.
Do we have everyone? Not quite everyone. Just yet.
Not quite, not quite. Ah, there they come.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. First of all, it will never get old, the pleasure of watching a bunch of people on Miro collaborating or working even independently in various sandboxes. It is impressive, and it's impressive and pleasing at any scale, whether it's 10 people or 1,000 people. So thank you for indulging us in that. Thank you for participating in that. Amazing to see some of the patterns that we're merging, and I don't have any insight into the conversations. I will ask if there are one or two people who would just like to give a flavor Well, is there somebody from group one who'd like to give a flavor of their, or in audio?
Group
There we
one
go.
was Felicity, Heather, and Katie.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is Katie. So really, we just had a conversation how we've seen some of these models. Maybe we haven't necessarily named them in the work that we've done formally, but we could see the model in use. And so we kind of talked through that.
Mhm.
And it was interesting, the different perspectives and what we were able to share. And one that we chatted about was the, let's see here. I can't see it. I put you on my small screen. Let me put you back. It was the one with the vision,
The creative
and
tension.
creative tension. And so I shared an example about my last organization. I'm in Maine, and I've worked in healthcare, and it's very rural up here, and how the pandemic impacted the organization and staffing, and how you have to adjust, like we had to adjust the vision and the timeline to ensure that our current state, where we could maintain our staff, make sure they were safe and well taken care of. So sometimes you have to adjust that. So I talked about that.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you for sharing that. I'll ask. Elise, I'll rely on you for any of the names for Group 3. There were some boundary spanners, which I love to see. That was hoped for. Can you give us somebody from that group give us a flavor as to some of the discussions you had around models that seem to straddle the line?
And group 3 is Jamie, John, Leslie, and Amy.
And if you're speaking, you're on mute.
All right, by golly, I'll speak.
There we go. Thank you.
All right. So part of it was we're using a model to assess models, and we were assessing the Foursquare model at the same time that we were assessing the models, and trying to figure out, okay, so how does this model work? What is this model actually doing for us? And as we got in there, we first I would say that we didn't have very much of anything in the if box, because we felt that a lot of these models were, like you could see, combinations of steps to do, which seemed to culminate in an end result that you could say whether you got it or not. And that seemed to, for me, and I was the one who put some of those in that straddle line, and made that felt like where I would want to straddle those. And then some of the ones, the little bit between how and what was quite a topic of discussion in our group. We were really trying to distinguish the difference between how it all works, which feels like a bird's eye view, versus what to do, which felt like a more stepwise view or a more actionable view, and it wasn't always clear what to do there for us.
Oh, no, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Everything that you've said resonates with certainly with me. Some of the things, and Tricia, if we can move over to our version of the exercise. Again, as Tricia said, this isn't the answer by any means, but it's a way in which we approached it. The insights that, building on that last one, there will be a good model can be used in different contexts. As you said, DMAIC, for one, the Six Sigma one, is going to tell you what to do, but DMAIC inherently speaks to verifying whether it's worked at the very end. Did you get the measurable result, and can you control it? And so depending on the context that you're in, we're in a what conversation, moving into an if conversation, that model's very portable and flexible. The same with PDCA, which I've learned is not everyone's favorite, and some of you may have placed it down with disdain. And there are other models that we didn't explore that might fill out some of the gaps. But the big takeaway, certainly for Tricia and I, has been, one, to have a sufficient set of models without it being overwhelming. I think we may have been on change programs where it's just one model after the next, and people are easily confused. This is how we do change here at this big company. Here are 200 models, but have a sufficient set of models that you can speak to the various quadrants in the life cycle of a change program, and noting that some of those may be multi-purpose. So anyway, that's that. We just wanted to share our experience, and again, everything that you've said is it resonates. We've got somebody raising their hand.
Yeah.
That is me. I love this exercise because so often we bring models into organizations, and models are perceived to be truth. They're made by the experts. This is how it works. This is it. This is the right answer. And what I like about this exercise is it requires the participant to create a model and to see the difficulty, and that things aren't quite as clear cut as any one of these authors would have us believe. And it could possibly help our clients let go of the rigor. I mean, the models are wonderful because they give us rigor, because of the value of the frameworks, but they can sometimes become quite calcified in people's minds. And this helps people maybe be a little bit more flexible and recognizing that the world is messy, and models help, but they're not perfectly descriptive.
Yeah, that's
Thank
great.
you. No, incredibly insightful. It's one of those things, I had to grow in my own career to have the confidence to say to somebody who's not really gone through a change program, as I draw on the whiteboard, nothing complicated, just with a red pen, your change program is going to look like this. Which is, to anyone who's gone through it, even successful ones, it is experienced that way. It is messy. But as you were also saying, putting something out there to just try and put a little bit of order around that, maybe temporary, is very helpful. And it forces us to really assess the limitations of some of these. Thank you.
Eileen's got her hands up too.
Yeah.
Yeah, along with what you were saying, John, one of the things we talked about is the beauty of doing this process is it helped us talk through our own justification of why we put models in certain places, which is great practice for when we're trying to explain it to clients, because some clients don't have a model, or if they have a model, they're just following, this is the process, this is our design, can you help us implement it? And this helps us justify the considerations that leaders, people might want to consider as they're moving through or thinking through their change design of their initiative. So this was great. And I really appreciate the thought of it is assessing a model of a model. I was like, oh my
I know, that's even beyond meta.
I have tape here. I'm going to tape my brains in, because that was such a beautiful, like, oh my God, just when you thought you were done.
No, sorry, we've broken one of our participants now. It's reassembled the brain. No, thank you. And this has to be my last point. Otherwise, Tricia will send a brick through my window all the way from where she is in Trinidad to move on. But the thought you inspired in me was, when you're speaking to an organization, we may find that we keep saying, you need to know what to do. Here's a model that tells you what you're going to do. And they're trying their best to let us know. I understand that. I just don't know why. You haven't helped me understand why I need to do it. You help unlock that, and that what is going to come along quite quickly. So again, it's you've got my neurons firing. So now we've broken the facilitator and a participant's brains. Tricia, I'll hand back to you.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. That was amazing, and I do even I agree. Like we've exploded everyone's mind. We've gone beyond meta. I just want to reiterate your point, John, about your selection of models and exactly where they fit may not be that important. But I think for me, what I take away is the message about having ones that can serve the different purposes, so that you can flex in between as you need to, because the life cycle of change, as you're saying, is so messy that you need the different models at different times to help people sort of position and sort of just see the lens of what's actually happening, and do they need, sometimes they need why in the beginning, but then maybe they need it a little later on as well. So we moved into how, but then we need to go back to the why. We need to go back to the why model. So it's really great to have that. It deepens the learning and I think strengthens the experience for people. So we were going to invite you, based on that, I think you've already started to say, is to think about that change program that you mentioned a little while ago, and to put into the chat, either in present tense or past tense, I could have used, or I could use, fill in the model that you like, model X, one of the 10, to accomplish Y. So, just think about the change program, either that you're involved in currently or maybe in the past, and how one of those change models might have helped you to do or see or accomplish something different. You can feel free to change the verb accomplish as well. So in your change program, I can use, or I could have used, fill in the model name to accomplish blah, or to do whatever you like. So think back to that program that you had, and you can pop it in the Zoom chat once you feel that you've come to something you'd like to share. Oh, it's nice. The change equation. Yeah. Change equation is definitely one of my favorites as well. Works well at all stages in a program. Great way to help people connect. Adcon bridges. I get a +1 on elitism. Bridges have been a great model to help go, with that, the layoffs and the structured shift, to sort of just help give validation to all the emotions that people are experiencing and how that's happening. Demaic, John, your favorite. Streamlining services is a great, yep. Reducing costs, definitely perfect for eliminating waste. So you can feel free to keep putting that in there. We are a couple of minutes to the end, and I just want to make sure that I get a chance to hear from everyone in terms of feedback. So we have a couple links that we're going to share with you now, but we would also like to ask you just for some feedback as well. And I will pop a couple of things in the chat one at a time. So the first question we have for you is just share with us something that you appreciated about the session today. So please share something that you appreciate today, about today. And we'll do this all in Zoom chat. And if you're still thinking about your change program, that's fine. You can just pop it in there when you're ready. Learning from each other, the opportunity to share and learn. We have to thank Elise for bringing us all together to share and learn together. Moving out of our comfort zones with conversations and breakout groups. Thank you for not dropping off, Ramona, when we said that we were going to do breakout groups. Thank you for sticking it out. Examples of models from other industries. Great. Wonderful. Lovely. Thank you. And the next feedback question I have for you. Oh, lovely. Thank you. There's lots more coming in. That's great. So any suggestion that you would like to make? So wish that you would have had for today's session that we could have done differently. Oh, another one. Bridges model. So any suggestion you'd like to make? Yeah, bigger models. Okay. Yes. I know we were talking when you guys were in the breakout group about scaling in mural boards and mirror boards and getting that exactly right. So I appreciate the feedback on the models.
I'm sorry. The name of our podcast is Every Little Model.
We had to make them little. We do have a document with all the models in it, and that is one of the links that I'm going to share as well. It's a Google Doc, so you will get that. I'm going to drop those links in here as soon as we're finished sort of going through the feedback section. So you will have all of those models as well. Absolutely. And apologies that they were too small. Zoom in more. I know my screen is going to 400% and then stopping. So yeah. I think you have to scale everything smaller again to get that right.
Oh, that's right. Mural, because we had that same challenge. We were sharing the screen, which was great. I also want to thank you for allowing us to share the screen in the small breakouts, because one of our group members couldn't access, so we were able to share.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that must be a setting inside of Lisa's thing, which is great. Good thing to note for other sessions. So thanks for pointing that out, Eileen. I really appreciate that. Wonderful. Okay, so we're getting to the end. I don't want to run late. I know everybody's been here a long time. So last question I have for you is to fill in the Mad Lib. Before today, I thought of models as X, and now I think about them like Y. So fill in the Mad Lib and share, a revelation that you've had today about models, and then I'm going to share a few links with you, and that will bring us to the end. Beautiful. These are lovely. Thank you. So a really big thanks to you all for staying with us all this time and, learning about models and going meta on the meta model and really kind of just going as high as we can in terms of thinking of models and the framework for models. We really appreciate it. John and I really appreciate it. We want to share with you a couple of links. The first one I'll just drop in here. As I mentioned, John and I co-host a podcast called Every Little Model, and we would love if you would listen in. Those links will take you either to Spotify or to Apple, depending, or you can find it on any platform that you listen to your podcasts on, if you like to listen to podcasts. And I do encourage you to follow us on Instagram, where we share visuals of the models, and you can download the transcripts and the actual visual of the different model. And then the link that I promised you as well with the document with all the models that we looked at today is also here. So that is will take you to a Google Drive, and you'll get the 10 models that we were looking at there as well. And then I would love to invite you to connect with John and myself on LinkedIn. So I'll just pop our LinkedIn links in there. And John, the last thing we did is we created a little LinkedIn post about today's session, and John's going to drop that into LinkedIn. We would love if you would have a look at the post and just like it or share it or leave a comment on LinkedIn as well. So really grateful for you joining us today and just sharing your thoughts on LinkedIn and giving it a little boost as well. It'd be a great way to share what we were talking about today. So thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to turn you back over to Elise to just wrap us up.
I think that's so clever. That is so amazing. So for those of you who are doing thought leadership, having a post ready to go that everybody can join in on, brilliant, well done. And in terms of other things that you can expect going forward, so as you know, we've been recording. And a quick reminder, while we got a lot of great feedback here, if you would also take an opportunity to leave some feedback for us in the anonymous feedback form, we'd really appreciate it. You can expect within the next week or so, in the meeting innovation community, we will post the edited recording. All of these links again, so if those flew by and you didn't quite get them, they will be back there. The chat transcript, all of that stuff. And then please do join us again. It says June, but guess what? In July, because this is June is in the books. We are so done with June. So in July, we have a couple of things coming. First, there is a session on the art of unfinishing. So there's a gentleman who has a model he's developed about being very zen in your sessions, and he'll be sharing that in early July. And then later in July, for anybody who facilitates on a regular basis, there is a cohort of international facilitators that have been trying to figure out this hybrid meeting thing. And we are going to get some groups together, some who will be in person and some who will be online, and we will just see what happens. So it's experiment time, and we would love to have more people to experiment with. What works, what doesn't? Who can say? Well, we can, because we're going to try it out. So please join us, and thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely.
We'll hang out for a couple minutes if anybody wants to chat, but otherwise, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was really great. I was sharing with my group. I'm currently making my transition from org psychology into change management, because I was doing change management before I knew it was change management, and then ended up switching out before I learned about some of these beautiful models. I was curious about what was your experience looking at, if we were an organization and you asked us about these change models, what would be your approach to to exploring why we selected why each group selected what they selected. So like if each of the groups were a division, what would be your approach to find out why we selected the different models in the places that we did?
Just to make sure I understand the question, this is I'm assuming that there are models already in existence or used by these groups, and so how to surface what's in use and why those were selected. An approach. I always love these scenarios. I'm boring that way, as my family would say. No, I think one of the ways in would be almost a modification of the matrix that we were using. So how do you, speaking to a business unit leader, how do you help the organization understand the greater context that they sit in? What do you use to do that? How do you situate them? And then the second thing would be, how do you help them understand the vision for the organization and what we're here to do and what we're about? And then you can start to cascade from there. I won't exhaust it because you can probably feel the logic that you would go from, well, where are we situated? What's our vision? What are our goals? What are we here to accomplish? How do we think change happens? That's one of my favorite ones. And we didn't get into logic models today, and it's a session on its own. But what is your theory of change? How do I tell people what to do and they do it? It's a terrible model of change, but it's a logic model that's in use. I show people the numbers and we set goals and therefore people change. Starting to surface some of those paradigms is, I find it fascinating because you can start to get a feel for the biases. Another one, not to exhaust it, but is say, I tell people the challenge and they tell me how they're going to deal with it, and change happens. So that I don't know if that answers your question, but that's certainly a way into it from my end.
A slightly different ad that I would include. I mean, like, I'm thinking back, your question makes me think back of the different change programs that I've worked on. And on each change program we worked on, we might have had a different selection of models that we were using. And we had different ones. And you're prompting me to think about, okay, well, intentionally, why did we choose different ones? What was behind that, about the choice that we used, about why were we using creative tension on this one, and why are we focusing more on the change equation on another program, for example. And I think it's a sense, I'm reflecting on that, a sense of kind of something about the organization, like when we would trying to understand the organization and the culture in terms of what would relate to them, what do we think they would relate most easily to. I think there's always a sense as well about what models do they already use in there, and do they have certain models that they use in their own language, and maybe they can use them slightly differently. So you could use them for a different purpose than what they're using them for now. So kind of what do they use? Sort of what's on the boundaries? I think we've run across many situations where organizations as well have invested in training with different organizations, and they've introduced certain models to the organization, and they've already invested in that. So we would choose to use those models if they were certain how models or if models, so that we were reinforcing what they had already done as well. I'm not sure if I'm skirting around what you were asking, if that was part of the answer. It's kind of, that was some of what was behind why did we pick the models, because there are many why models and how models and whatever. And I think we did want to have a selection of different ones to help transition through the life cycle of the program. But it wasn't the same every time, to your point. It was different depending on the client, the situation, the type of change program that they were working on. There were many different factors, I think, that influenced that.
So I have a question related on that. Because one thing that I've run into recently is a client that has a very strong clarity about their model, and their model doesn't quite fit what we actually need to do. So they really want to do UK double diamond, human-centered design kinds of things in a scenario where some of the fundamentals of what they would need to do to change really don't need a discovery phase, right? Have you ever trained anybody how to do this job? No, but I want to do a lot of investigation into why they're not doing the job. Well, it's like, we can do all kinds of interviews about why they aren't meeting an unstated criteria that you've never trained them to meet, I guess. But, so what do you do in a situation where you encounter an inappropriate model that they're wedded to?
No, the inappropriateness is unique. Because you can spend, as you probably experienced, weeks and weeks spinning the wheels because they think that's what they need to do. You're saying that's not going to work here at all. And one way I've found into that is, sorry to say, it's a model, but it's to craft really. It's the way I framed it is, this may be something we want to do, and there's a lot of energy. You don't have the fundamentals in place. The fundamentals are not there, and oftentimes that might have to be a customized model, but you can lean on other frameworks that speak to, do we have roles and responsibilities established? Are people clear on what they're there to do? Are people have skills and capabilities to do those jobs? It's in a whole host of these. They end up, they can be very hierarchical in a pyramid. They could just be a 9-box model. If we have these things in place, then we can talk about the fun stuff. But again, early in my career, I remember coming across this. My manager, as a consulting manager, kept saying, "You've got to get them to develop this system." And I was saying, they don't have anything. This isn't an improved thing. This is a put in place thing that we need to do. It's an installation.
Right. Oh, that's a fabulous phrasing. That's super helpful, actually. Yeah.
Great questions.
Any other questions from our friends here?
Well, I'll ask one. As I said before, I really love being able to use the models that work most effectively, given the context, given the needs. One thing that's really nice about having one model and sticking with it, let's say ADCAR with the ProSci folks, is they've got a really great set of tools. Mm-hmm. You've got your tools, whether or not you use the ones that they provide, or you create your own set of worksheets or Excel sheets, whatever you might want to use. So I'd love to hear you talk to that. Is that how do you use the various models in terms of creating tools for them, or do you find that each engagement you're creating a new set of mechanisms to use, or how do you play with that?
No, that's a great question. I mean, we have worked with companies, as Tricia had said, that have very clear methodologies. I mean, they've assessed the consultants who come in to say, you need to know about Agile, you need to know about product development, you need to know about ADCAR. We're not adding something new. This is what we've settled on, and that's great. It's not merely that I respect it. I think it's the right thing to do. We are going to practice these things over and over. We're going to practice how to go through DMAIC or ADCAR and go deeper into it. So I think that and even if a client doesn't have any of those things, our recommendation is that you should put a box around this. There is some, I don't always love the phrase, but there is some freedom within constraints, in that it forces you to go into different dimensions, to go deeper. It's to move from being a fox to a hedgehog. The fox running around with. But here's your 12th model that we could use, and I just saw this book when I was going through the airport. Let's use this one. Can be very confusing to people, and as I said before, I don't think it allows you to practice things. We were talking in the break about. I'll be vulnerable here. I use Excel, but there are a lot of things in Excel I'm very bad at. I cannot make a pivot table reliably. I always have to get some coaching on that because I don't do it all the time. But if I'm living in Miro, I can do lots of really fun things within Miro. I can manage to improvise such that I can create new functionality, etc. Just because I'm living there. And it's the same with change tools and change models and templates and ways of intervening, developing these tactical ways of framing things, of mapping things. I'm going to go on too long if I'm not careful, but I think there's a lot to explore within those constraints to go deeper, and I think it's worthwhile doing that. I don't know if that touches on what you were looking at.
Specifically thinking about, like, how do you develop the tools that folks will use? And it sounds like you will use the tools that they want to use.
Yeah.
Not doing a lot of development.
I think we definitely use the tools that they have, but I mean, we have also created, which I think is what you're getting at, like we've created tools that go with some of the models that we do use. So for example, like the change equation, we've taken that and, we made a template out of that. And it's like a worksheet, right? That has the different elements of it and some prompt questions in there. So you can use that as a worksheet now with a team that says, well, where are we today? You know, where do we think we are in terms of a vision, and what would we do to sort of increase people's understanding and commitment to the vision, right? So we can use them as worksheets. I've used those. You can print them out and use them as in sessions, in workshops and sessions like that, or, you know, you have them, you know, on a flip chart that you're drawing up or something like that. So I think we definitely have turned models into tools, which is what you're getting at. And so, and the more that you have a selection of models that I think scatter through that what, why, how, you know, what if selection, you have your selection of tools that essentially you can draw from, right? Because to John's point is that you aren't bringing new models to the table every single time. And I think John and I definitely where he was going with the point, and I think I can just build on that in our experience when we worked with this boutique consulting company. We had years where we swung the pendulum from left to right when it came to models. It was like any model, like you just bring, you know, the model that you kind of like, you know, it's like the world is your oyster in terms of models. And then we swung the pendulum back to no, we're only going to use these models on change programs. And then we settled somewhere in the middle around, we have a selection of programs, of models that we know scatter through these 4 boxes, and they will work, right? They will help guide you through the life cycle of a change program. That doesn't mean you can't use something else if it is that it asks for something else, or the client uses something else and you want to reinforce that. But we want to start from this place of these models. So if there's, you know, if it's Bridges model that we're using, then that's the one, that's the go-to, as opposed to Kubler-Ross's, you know, cycle of change, for example. We're going to start with Bridges because that's the one that we use. We're also, because what that helps us do in the organization where we worked at the time, was that helped us drive consistency in the people, in our own people, and the experience of our own people, to be able to talk to models and to have a shared experience from program to program. So as they moved from program to program, they were deepening their own practice and their own understanding of the models in terms of using them. So it wasn't Kubler-Ross on one program and Bridges on another and something else, right? They were deepening their own, and we were creating a consistent experience for clients as well, because as clients move within their own programs, they're seeing the same things show up in different teams. So you're creating a ritual and a unity of a language that they are sharing in and amongst the program, which has its own benefits as well. But I think, yes, we've definitely turned models into tools, so to speak, like canvases and worksheets and things like that, so that they are a little more tactile and exploratory in terms of like filling them out and thinking through prompt questions and stuff like that.
That said, I can't stop making my own models, just like everyone.
Yeah. Did that help, Amy? Was that kind of what you were looking at?
Yeah, thank you both, and Elise, for this extra time. It's really wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So Tricia and John, if you haven't seen this one, and I'm sure you have, but this variation on the mastery ladder, if you go down into, we were talking during the break about development and personal development and things that tie to larger eco cycles, basically in the wild. That particular model I've seen be really super helpful for all kinds of people working on their competency to step into the ring, right?
Yeah. The conscious unconscious incompetence.
Right, and that whole bit, that conscious incompetence, that ladder, and then adding the mastery curve to it. So if you scroll down, he did a thing that made it so that you don't get like you hit the pinnacle and you stop and therefore you're Yoda and you win, kind of a thing that was broken about that model. So if you ever want to talk to Paul, he's lovely.
Oh, sounds like a guest for our podcast, definitely. Yeah,
that's right.
Thank you.
Any final questions, or shall we let these fine people who put all this energy breathe and get a glass of water?
I'm bouncing out. Thank you so much. This was so incredible. I really appreciated learning some new models, and I'm excited to start exploring and seeing how I can tap in, especially about teaching models. I really appreciated when you said that, Tricia, because again, I haven't had that experience of being able, like, who would be the people that I would be teaching to when I'm looking at learning, assessing learning and doing this shift. So this pivot from org site to org change, and the blends, especially given the pandemic, we're blended. So it's amazing. So anyway, everybody have a blessed day. Thank you so much, Elise. I just love this stuff.
Bye, Eileen. Thank you so much.
Bye.
And bye, Katie. Bye, everyone.